That's true. Fair enough.
See? You know. We're recording. Yes, Matthew, you've been a bad person. You sit in the corner. Hey, Tiffany, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Perfect. Music in my ears. Thank you.
Perfect.
Oh, I didn't.
Yeah, if you want to turn off the sound is just knowledge the three little dots at the bottom. You click on them on the on Zoom. So at the bottom of the participant list it says and then there's three dots. Participant, like in the participant column, so like where the names are. So you see how on the bottom, yeah. So if you are a little further down next to mute all of those three, that. Yeah, so you click that, you can uncheck where it says play sound when someone joins or leaves, and then that will. I can also do it.
Oh, I just did it.
I was just like for your own.
I just did it.
Okay.
You know, I'm a little slow.
No, it's fine. I was just like letting you know, so like maybe for your other classes, if you need to do that, like.
No, see, I learned. I appreciate it. Let's make you. No. For those of you that are in Boston, the weather today is like crazy beautiful. Oh, I want to be outside. I'm seeing somebody shake their head that usually comes to my class in person. Nice to see you, Mr. Hunter.
Hello. I have an exam right after this, so I didn't have time to make it back.
The type of accidents I have at my age are way different than the ones that you have, so I understand. But it's beautiful out there, isn't it?
Yeah, it was absolutely gorgeous. It was probably one of the nicer days we've had this fall, and probably one of the last nice days. So yeah. I enjoyed it.
And it'll be funny because in January, when we have a day that's like 32 degrees, we're going to think it's summer again.
Is there a breakout? Because it says the room's locked.
Yeah, like my teammate just messaged me saying that like the room is locked.
Did I do breakout?
No, maybe go to the more section. What you were doing before, or how like. Oh, like the three dots there. Oh yeah, you click the lock meeting, so unlock it. There you go.
Can't script that.
Did that work?
Yeah.
Yeah. I was wondering why no students were joining the meeting.
Unfortunately.
So I'll tell you something funny, although it's being taped. So I have perceptual dyslexia. So I not text, but I see everything reverse in my brain, and the mouse, it works reverse for you. So I have to quickly translate, right? So I'm slow on some of those things. That's why I find it kind of funny. Like, you didn't need to know that. But
Fun fact.
everybody has graces and everybody has other things. Yeah, we're just having a little conversation here. The professor locked half of you out by mistake. Sorry about that. I hit the wrong button. I'm like, oh, I only have 18 students in attendance. Anything good, Julio, you eating?
I'm just eating fruits.
Oh, well, it's healthy for you.
Yep.
I had a student in the lab today, so I have student workers that work for me, right? And it was her birthday, so her mother, and she lives local, and her mother made her this kick blank cake, right? Like chocolate and strawberries and whipped cream, and she's describing it. You think she would bring in a piece for us? No. I fired her. Okay, I think we'll get started. All right. First up, as I'm booting up, for those of you that attended my office hours last night, honestly, I went to bed on a high. The project proposals for the final project were outstanding and way above generally what is I would have thought for a sophomore level class, right? So you raise the bar and you guys meet it. So I was really, really impressed. For those of you that still need to get your outline in or meet, you can do that during office hours tomorrow. And I can help, add content to it, or in some cases, actually, ask you to pare it down a little bit because we got only about a month left, and I clearly don't want you to be burning the midnight oil. I want you to do a good job, take it away with you, but, we got to do things in proportion, right? Okay, so I like business process mapping. Anybody ever do business process mapping? All right, so I'm going to suggest that you look at the syllabus, and I have the Lucid chart link there. It's free software available to all BU students, faculty, and staff. It is an industry standard. Some of you have already used it for your ERD, but you use it for business process mapping, and we'll go through that. Clearly, when you get to the team project, you turn in one, but it's got to be a collective. You're going to need people to read the case and to make sure that all of the actors and processes have been identified, but you're going to use Lucid Chart. It's a great tool that you can also use in your internships going forward. And many companies use Microsoft Visio, and it reads those files. So you have something that you can take with you. It's a hard skill that you can put on your resume. And again, compared to the rest of the sections, generally I'm only the one that uses it. So you guys actually have an advantage. Okay, enough of that. So business process mapping, right? We kind of touched on it a little bit when we started talking about business process engineering, right? You take a process and it's going to be routine and structured, right? And you're breaking it down into the various steps in order to accomplish. So in the textbook, they have this lamest, stupidest example about, oh, let's break down the steps required to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Well, the problem is, I don't know about you, but I don't have a maid to deliver the sandwich to me, right? So the steps are kind of weird. But if you think about it, right, it's like developing an outline for a project. What are the key things that you need to touch on? And so in business process mapping, we do the same thing. So in team rooms, what are the types of processes we're looking at, right? It's reservations, availability, who's involved, it's the student, it's the system, and so you document it. This, I also think, is kind of lame, but it's in the book. How do you make pasta, right? And so in your mind, you've already really structured it when you cook. If you were to illustrate it on paper, like your friend said, oh, can you give me the recipe and do it step by step? So step one, right? You gotta fill the pan with water, put it on the stove. Remember to turn the stove on, right? You have to choose what kind of pasta you're gonna make, those type of things. So it's breaking down processes to its smallest available steps. And we're really talking about in business like payables, receivables, customer relationship management, adding new customers, looking at sales. And the reason why you do that is you want to match the systems to see if you can get some economies of scale, some efficiencies, right? You also use it as a training guide. If anybody bake? Anybody a baker? Okay, I have one. Anybody remote a baker? Well, baking versus cooking, right? In cooking, you can sort of wing it, right? You can throw things together and hopefully it's edible, and sometimes it's not, but it is what it is. In baking, you really have to follow a precise recipe to get the same desired product every single time, right? So that it's a cake or it's a brownie or it's a cheesecake or a mousse. And if you don't, it tastes kind of odd or it doesn't rise, correct? Well, that's the same thing here at business process mapping. I want to use this so that my employees process things exactly the same and it's predictable what the outcome is. We call that an as-is diagram. What it is today, I'm documenting. What you do as business consultants is you also then look at areas of improvement and you redraw the areas to be improved, and that's called the to be, okay? So I love to use the ERD diagrams, keep on reinforcing them, right? But every information system has at least one application software. That's a basic, rule of thumb. It may have more, but it at least has one. So I have accounts receivable, I have accounts payable, I have sourcing. So I'm going to skip the gobbledygook because I'm going to reinforce it a couple of different times, right? So in business process mapping, just like you guys did in ERDs, there's symbols that we're going to use. So that way it's consistent, right? So these are the basic symbols. Start, so that would be step one in the recipe. End is the last step in the recipe. We're going to use activity to be each individual step, right? So get pan, turn on stove, fill with water, watch it boil. That's a step. We're going to use a diamond for things that are decisions. So pot is boiling, you open your cupboard, and you have 4 pasta boxes. You have to choose which one you're going to cook, right? Or you have dry pasta and you have fresh pasta, or if you're like me, you make it homemade, you have to make a decision which one you're going to do, right? So if there's a decision, we're going to use a triangle. All right. So this is what a business process map looks like. Any swimmers in the class? Anybody awake? So in swimming, if you're in competition, you're each in your own swim lane, right? And if you cross a lane, you're disqualified, right? So everybody goes in a swim lane. And so that's what these are called. Every role in the business process you're mapping has its own individual swim lane. And you always title it, just like everything else in this course, singular. So it's not customers, it would be customer. We have a salesperson, we have operations manager, credit manager, and sales VP. These are roles, not people, because you can have many customers, right? But it's the role called customer. Just like with team rooms, we have lots of students, but there's a role called student, okay? And again, this comes out of the book, so I like to contrast the right way to do it with what the book says. Usually you're going to start with the customer, and so there should be the starting symbol so that people know where the process begins. So if I were to annotate it, I would put a open circle as my first point here. Each of these, if you think about it, are like what you do in a web form. So you submit your order, it goes to a salesperson, they look at it, right? They give you, in this case, some sort of quotation. This is a decision point, right? You get the quotation as a customer, and you say, oh, am I going to continue with this transaction? Yes. Or do I want a different product or a different amount, right? And so then you go through the process again. Anybody know what this symbol is? This symbol is database, right? So you're interacting with a computer system, or in your case, when you're doing a hospital case, it's all paper. And so it could be a paper file, but it's to signify an information repository, right? So if you think about it, it would be the various tables in Microsoft Access homework, right? You had a customer table, you had a table for compensation. Each of those would be their own cylinder. Anybody know what this symbol means? The red cross, the plus. It means documented elsewhere. So this procedure is for an order process, but let's think about it. You go on to Amazon, and even if you have a Prime account, right? So you pick whatever you're gonna order, and you submit, and you have a credit card already in there. It's immediately checking with Visa, MasterCard, Discover, Uber, wherever you got your credit card issued from, to see if you have sufficient balance, right? That process takes place outside of the ordering, and the information comes back to say, approved. It usually involves other players, and so therefore you put, documented elsewhere, which is the cross. Anybody know what dotted lines mean?
It's a data flow.
Yeah, just like a data flow. It means, information is moving from one process to the next, from one person to the next, or from a system, right? A system is always going to give you information back. Think about it. Customer valid, yes. The system is giving me some sort of acknowledgement on the screen, right? And so that's an information flow. Versus these filled in lines, those are process flows, right? It's a sequential flow. And again, we're going to have some fun with some of the practice today. So like here, check customer credit, we blew it up, and you can see that it's a completely different process, right? We have different players involved called actors, sales, credit analysts, the credit system itself, right? So it would be, Visa, MasterCard. We have a credit manager if an override is needed. I don't know about you, but in the past when I was younger, sometimes I would be at my limit and I would request an over limit approval. And so the system can generate it usually within a tolerance of maybe 5% of my overall. But if it's greater than that, it goes to a human, right, for review. And that's what this is saying. And every time I use my credit card to make payment, right, my score out there is constantly being evaluated. And so they're providing information to the company. Again, I have a check here because what you're asking the credit manager to do is different than the standard process, right? You're asking them to analyze the information that's being presented. Maybe, a 2 or 3% tolerance, it goes approved. Maybe you look at 1 year of payments and make sure that they've been timely, right? It goes through. So you would document that in the procedure. When you work for somebody, generally, all of that is written down, right? Standard operating procedures, we just happen to do it in a graphical form, which is a business process map. All right. So I kind of talked about this. What do you do? Usually you're doing this to document requirements or procedures, right? So what is it you want to document? So you're working for the UDC and you're at the front desk. I guarantee you they give you a procedure on how to handle walk-ins versus phone calls, right? That's exactly what this is. And then we in IT look at that procedure and say, oh, maybe there's ways in which we can improve on it. Maybe we need a system. Maybe rather than manually signing in, why couldn't you use a Q code, right? Be much more efficient, better counting. Immediately you can go to a database. You guys are now skilled at queries. We can get out the information. You implement it. You start measuring, did I achieve what I wanted to? And then it's, back to improving on it if it can be. All right. So here's the full list of symbols. Start, stop, activity, right? Step. Decision. When you use a decision, there's only an A or a B or a yes or no. There's never 3 things that could come out of a decision. If it is, quite honestly, it means you have to break it down to another step. You only can have yes, no, A, B, So team rooms, right? System. Available, yes, no. And it's for that particular time. It wouldn't be maybe, right? It's either going to be A or B, right? Do you want additional products added to your order, customer? Yes, no, right? And then you go through the steps. And if you think about it, again, on Amazon Prime, it preps you with the decision, right? Anything else, right? Do you want to close out your cart? Is this the correct address to ship to? No, edit. Yes, it becomes part of the invoice, right? So it's always a yes, no, or an A-B. Data flow is exactly what we talked about. It's information, and always a system is going to give you information, right? Repository means database, table, or for the hospital case, it could mean a paper file, Because if you think about it, a cabinet full of paper records on patients is in fact a system, right? It's just not very efficient. And if you remember from the midterm, one of the questions is which of the following examples is similar to an Access database structure? And it was really the card catalog system in the library, right? Because even though it's paper files, it's alphabetical, it's ordered, and so you can still have that as a repository. All right. So we're gonna, before we break into teams, I'm gonna bring up a new window. All right. So I'm going to share the screen now. All right, Sally's Suites. There's a folder for those of you that have really good internet access. There's a folder on our tool site called In-Class Exercises, and it's actually there. It's a Word doc. I'll make it a little bit smaller so the whole thing is on it. Oops. So I want you to read this, because I find it, if you break out in teams, it's pretty hard to do this. So read it through, and I want you to sketch what the individual swim lanes would be, right? And then as a team, you can build the steps. So remember, each role has its own swim team. So I've already given it to you at the bottom here, right? There are 3 actors. We have a clerk, a customer, and an inventory order database. So maybe 5 or 6 minutes to read it and just jot down a few of the steps, and then we'll break into teams. This is me coming in. Thanks. I muted.
Did you just logged into the meeting with a different device, right? Or you just need to mute yourself on the iPad.
That's what it's on.
Go to this, so just go back into the meeting and then on the little. You should just click on the Zoom icon. Are you still in the meeting or did you leave it?
You're a genius. Okay, I'm going to make you go into groups, but before we do that, I'm going to start you off. And of course, when you're a little dyslexic, you can ask for a screen share while the other person share. Oh, I can't. Okay, so you know I like to draw. We have 3 actors, right? So this is customer. Remember, it's singular. This is clerk. This is database. You can use one title for a variety of databases, right? Just separate them out. I'm going to start here. And the first step in there is request item, right? I'll just shorthand it. It then moves to the clerk, right? And they're going to check the database inventory if there's available product. Okay? You have a decision point. Yes, you're going to go one way. No, you're going to have to inform the client, right? And it's like, oh, do you want an additional product? So you keep on building it. It's like a puzzle. Okay? So I'm going to break you out into breakout rooms. That looks like kindergarten to me. Sorry. So this was options.
what's up? Sorry, just connect my AirPods. Yeah, that's not want to do that.
A little bit better than I normally do. This is based on their teams. I wanted to win, but it didn't pick up for me.
Yeah, gotcha.
You need an outlet?
Yeah. There's one back here. I just.
Well, I guess you don't have to say info, just be like, ask the customer.
Okay, welcome back. Just to let you know, what you just worked on was a midterm exam question along with Microsoft Queries, database design, and 50 multiple choice. That was the original exam we had for this class. It blew me away too. So you're not gonna have to do this on an exam, right? Because you have to draw and stuff. But I'm gonna build skill and experience with this, so that way there, when you get to your team project, you know, you feel like you can handle it. Does anybody from their team want to take the risk and show me a little piece of what they've done? And then we can, as a class, build on it. And I also will post and show you the answer key. There's no wrong thing. We'll just move things around if we need to. Oh, come on, I have to have a risk taker here. A virtual surf and turf dinner. It's virtual though. Nobody. All right. Again, the deal was I don't call on you guys, so. Let's share the screen. For some reason it doesn't like this document. That's not going to share. Okay, can you guys see it? Yeah. All right. So we have the three swim lanes that we talked about, right? We have customer, clerk, and database. And again, there's a couple of different ways you can handle it. So there's clearly wrong things, but there's multiple rights, just to let you know that. So you may have called things a little bit differently, right? So we start with the customer. Remember, it's an open circle. And if you think about it, this is a customer order process. So the lane that you start with is the lane that you will eventually end up with, right? So I start with the customer, and I'm going to end with the customer because I finished. So that's why you see eventually over here an end, okay? So request an item. Now, this could be an information flow line or a filled in line. In this particular case, I'm not as fussy, right? But it goes to the clerk. And that clerk is checking a database, really, right? They're on the phone or they're in the counter and they're gonna key in, oh, you want a dozen of chocolate chip cookies? Let me check and see if we have it in stock. You immediately get an answer to your screen. And that's what this inventory database is doing, right? So there's a two-way information flow. And then the clerk looks at the screen and says, hey, yeah, they're in stock. Yes, right? I think, and this is an old answer key, you would combine availability today with quantity, or you could separate it out. Some teams asked me that, and I said, the preferred way is to combine it, but you could separate it out, right? Because you want to be efficient. So somebody calls and says, hey, I want to order chocolate chip cookies for my daughter's first birthday party. Okay, how many are you interested in? 6 dozen, 10 dozen, 100 dozen, right? You probably would do it all in one transaction, right? if that item is not in stock, you have to inform the customer, right? Here's where everybody goofs up. Normally, you would say, oh, sorry, we don't have it in stock. You wouldn't end the process. Why? Matthew.
You still have the opportunity to make that sale at a later date or a different sale since you have the customer on the line.
Right, we're hungry for business, and so we don't want to lose the sale. Hey, you know what? I don't have either the quantity or the item that you're into, but you know, we have this great cheesecake brownie with caramel that we're offering. Can we, offer that to you? Are you interested? Let me check on the process, right? So you don't want to lose a sale that early. And that's why you end up doing this repeat here, right? So inform customer, it shouldn't be finished, right? You want another item? Okay. And you keep on going back and forth. All right. Then eventually, I now fill in the online, right? So you wanted, my caramel brownie cheesecake delights, and you wanted donut pops and anything else, right? So everything's entered, and it's going to update a database, right? Because inventory tells you it's available, but I need to secure that order so that two people aren't competing for the same product, right? Because then I'm going to run out. And so that's what this is saying. I'm going to update the order database, and I get a confirmation back as the clerk, right? In stock, handled, okay. And again, a lot of information flow. Okay, here's your invoice number. Your expected pickup date or delivery date is X, Y, or Z, whatever the case may be. What should I put in the check credit if I was doing this correctly? What should be there?
The plus sign.
Absolutely. And that's really because, this implies, and the case is old, that it's an internal, like you have a store credit database with Sally's Sweets. Do you still have availability on your account? But it should be a plus because today we're using, mostly electronic payment forms, debit card, credit cards, or whatever, right? So that would be the best, right? And it's over here, resolve credit issue. Hey, I'm sorry, your order got declined. You're going to have to resolve it with the credit card company, or are you at your upset limit? Do you want to order less? And that's why there's a plus here, right? It may include other processes or other people. So I'll post this. There's some things when this was first created that seemed good, but I would change it because systems are constantly changing. But the number one thing is when you read it, you break it down into the individual steps, right, as an outline. And then I always circle the ones that have some sort of decision that's required, right? Yes, no, completed order, finished, more product, those type of things. But there's always 2 lines out of a decision. No more, no less. Any questions on this? You're going to have a lot of practice, trust me. And it was really to introduce you, because when you read that part of the chapter, right, it seems really simple and it goes through all these definitions. In the end, what you're doing here is very similar to what we did with the entity relationship diagram. There you showed relationships between, entities, right? Themes, subject matters. Here, you're going to be showing relationships between process steps. You just happen to use different icons, symbols, and diagramming. Questions? This is actually pretty fun. It's a good skill. How many agree with me this is fun? Oh, well, at least we got a Got a couple of answers. See, I don't cold call, but I need some feedback here. You know how lonely it is? All right. So before we break for the class, let's stop here, right? Any questions about what's going on? Okay, so this weekend I will work hard and fast on the replacement for the Microsoft Access 3. And what I decided to do, it's going to be chapter questions, and I'll keep it at 2% of the grade. So that way there, if you do it, great. If you don't, it doesn't kill you. I'm not going to do any more quizzes. The average is near 100. We're going to secure your grade on quizzes because those are 8%, right? So I'm actually trying to give everybody a break. You got a lot going on. So that's number one. If you've been late on homework, you got to get caught up, right? Please, because the clock is ticking. Tomorrow, if you haven't already as a team, you should join office hours and we could explore your outline or brainstorm. I think there's still a couple of teams that need to do that. I'm working on the final exam already, and I'm thinking we may not make it comprehensive. We may make it just on chapters 6, 7, 8, and 9, because there's a lot of content, and maybe just a little database, but I'll have more information on that next week, okay? And that way we don't have to spend the time perhaps to go through individual exams, but if you have some issues or trends or study habit suggestions, you clearly can meet with me. Questions? Wow. All right. Well, I won't say this has been the most invigorating class that we've had, but that's okay. So have a great weekend. If you need me, right, email me, join my office hours. I'll be responsive. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.